Well, I'd say that hotel room windowless was a little depressing when I rewatched that video. I thought, to hell with that, I need to go out and get out and about into Kuala Lumpur. Show you a little bit of Kuala Lumpur if you haven't been here. It's a beautiful city. Malaysia's fantastic. You've got 3 times the buying power with the Australian dollar, 4 times with the US dollar. Foreigners can own land, they can rent. It's clean, it's tidy. Come on down. Anyway, that's enough travel shows. I did enough travel shows in Iran. I want to talk to you today about the reporting. The whole object of these videos is to clean up my image, obviously to get my stuff together, less ranting, stick to facts, be as objective as possible, and get my case into the High Court. Part of that will be, of course, to address the next issue, some of the reporting and the charges I was on after I got out of jail. And there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 charges. I'm going to go into those. This is going to be, I'd much prefer to do very short videos. I think that's always better, but it's just so much. I'm just going to have to do long ones, get it all out there, and if you're interested, you're going to watch. Or you're not going to watch. I'd rather 5 quality people who are going to assist me than 5,000 people breezing on through, giving me a thumbs up on Facebook. I'd rather 5 good quality people who are going to help me. Now, the good news is I've just spoken with a High Court appeals barrister, and he is very interested in taking on the case. He knows all about me. I've already met him previously. We're now going to see about crowdfunding and organising a hardcore, properly, professionally done go at the High Court. It has to be crowdfunded. I think we're looking at about $15,000 to $20,000. That should not be difficult once you realise the significance of my case and that they are already agitating for Section 18C of the federal legislation to be taken out. They've already agitated that. This is very important.
Well, you are right when you say that we made a commitment to repeal Section 18C in its current form, and we're going to do that. And you're right to identify the Bolt case as the episode that, as it were, catalysed this debate nearly 2 years ago. Regardless of whether you agree with what Mr. Bolt said, whether you were offended by it, whether you think that it was a deplorable thing to say, or whether you agreed with it, our view is that it's not the role of the government to tell people what they are allowed to think, and it's not the role of the government to tell people what opinions they are allowed to express. And if, as is obvious from your question, you strongly disapprove of what Mr. Bolt had to say, then in our view, that's a matter for civil society to make that judgment. It's not a matter of the government passing laws to censor the expression of opinions that are unpopular or offensive to mainstream society.
Senator, because you guys are handing out these things, okay, and it's disgusting, it's disgusting, appalling. It is appalling. It is appalling. It is appalling. It is appalling. And I'm going to go further on that. What was it, Brendan O'Connor?
Brendan O'Connell.
I'll go further on that because there's no way you can come to me and tell me that Jewish people are all racist.
You are racist, homicidal maniacs.
Disgusting comment.
That's cool.
Thank you.
You are racist, homicidal maniacs.
People are racist. I'm incredibly offended. I'm incredibly offended. I'm incredibly offended. I'm incredibly offended. I'm incredibly offended.
Whether you were offended by it, whether you think that it was a deplorable thing to say, or whether you agreed with it. Our view is that it's not the role of the government to tell people what they are allowed to think, and it's not the role of the government to tell people what opinions they are allowed to express.
Here's the other counts I got. This is the other 2 years. I actually got 8 years, or was it 10 years? 2 years for each count. I wrote on my blog, 1,500 Gazans are dead, 1 million plus Iraqis. We can only hope and pray that the international community strikes hard and makes sure that gaggle of Satan's children in occupied Palestine are brought to justice. Meaning Netanyahu, Ariel Sharon, all the rest. And they are gaggles of Satan's children. If we'd like to remember, Jesus called them children of hell, sons of their father the devil. I mean, you know, just quoting Jesus, baby. Let's just remember what Professor Norman Finkelstein said about Israel. Professor Norman Finkelstein is a professor of political science at Chicago University. And he called Israel coming from the boils of hell. He even praised Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah and said Hezbollah is the great hope of the region. And I second the views. This was from a professor of political science. And they gave me 2 years jail for this comment. I'll read it to you again. 1,500 Gazans are dead, 1 million plus Iraqis. We can only hope and pray that the international community strikes hard and makes sure that gaggle of Satan's children in occupied Palestine are brought to justice. 2 years jail. Next one. Fairly soon, Jews will realise that people are thoroughly sick of them, their whining, their perpetual victimhood, and their demands for people to bow down and worship their dodgy religion of Holocaustianity. And if any of you know the issues, they constantly raise the Holocaust as an excuse to stifle dissent against the racist, apartheid, sick, psychotic state of Israel. They've even had a former member of the Knesset, Shuri, Uri, I can't remember her name, Alam or something. She came out and she said on a major left-wing radio, look, she said, it's a trick, we always use it. When the Europeans criticise Israel, we raise the Holocaust. When an American criticises Israel, we call them an anti-Semite. It's a trick, we always use it. And that was the context of my comment. They're constantly using the Holocaust. So I got 2 years for that. I'll read it for you again. Fairly soon, Jews will realise that people are thoroughly sick of them, their whining, their perpetual victimhood, and their demands for people to bow down and worship their dodgy religion of Holocaustianity. 2 years jail. The next one, I wrote, the Jew community could have at least made their lies and slander half believable, but I guess after years of inventive and over-the-top Holocaust memoirs, they've gotten lazy. This was after they'd slandered me online, they claimed I threatened to kill their kids and all this other stuff. So I was just poking fun at their ridiculous, slanderous, libelous, defamatory statements. I'll read it for you again. 2 years jail for this. The Jew community could have at least made their lies and slander half believable, but I guess after years of inventive and over-the-top Holocaust memoirs, they've gotten lazy. 2 years jail. Next one. Former Ku Klux Klan lectures Aussies to stamp out racism. Unfortunately, our former clown has never read the Talmud, so we forgot to mention Jews as the biggest racists of all. Now, this is in terms of a current affair production which totally vilified me. They got some ex-Ku Klux Klan clown, triple K clown, whatever he is, claiming he speaks out against racism. He's funded by Jewish power interests. He gets a lot of press. But the point I'm making, if you've read Talmud or the Shulchan Aruch or the rabbinic commentaries, you'll know that Jews are the biggest racists on television. Remember, 80 plus to 90% of all Jews are Orthodox. Orthodox and the ultra-Orthodox are lunatics, okay? They're nuts. They're sick in the head. If you doubt me, go online and you'll find it. Just Google Rabbi Avadia Yosef, who said, just quoting from his holy books, that the only reason God made non-Jews were to be slaves for the Jew. Now, he's not speaking out of turn. That's in their books. It's in their books. It even says it in the Old Testament, that we will carry water and chop wood for them and be their slaves. Don't blame me. It's in their books. You say that's not a matter in the public interest? Are people honestly going to tell me that that's not a matter in the public interest? These lunatics are doing it in Palestine. And given a chance, they'll do it here. Now, that's not me with some irrational hatred of Jewish people. Jewish community know about this stuff and they keep very quiet. It's only a handful of activists that are really pushing this. Max Blumenthal, for one, he really focuses on this issue. He's excellent. I'll just read that last one for you again. Former Ku Klux Klan lectures Aussies to stamp out racism. Unfortunately, our former clown has never read the Talmud, so we forgot to mention Jews as the biggest racists of all. 2 years jail. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 years, 9 years. Now there was another one. I'm sure it was 11 years in total.
We've had enough of you, and those bells toll for you. Your days are numbered, and we're going to rescue as many of your victim cult members as we can and get the kids out and the decent people and educate them. I don't know how successful we'll be, but we can at least try.
Whether you were offended by it, whether you think that it was a deplorable thing to say, or whether you agreed with it, our view is that it's not the role of the government to tell people what they are allowed to think, and it's not the role of the government to tell people what opinions they are allowed to express.
Because I've got to convince you that my case is vital. Not only for the fact that the Israeli state came out against me personally, which is utterly unique, besides that and all the other stuff, my videos on Israel, high technology sector and so on, what was done to me, how I was terrorised, so on and so forth. You know, ministers ringing me, inviting me out for beers, and the minister was threatened, heads of counter-terrorism inviting me out for coffees, they then lose their job, and everything else that went on. I've got to stop rambling and get focused. So this one is about the legislation and getting to the High Court. They are trying to introduce this legislation all over the world, particularly in the United States.
So good morning, my name is Bill Arise. I'm a professor of law and device dean here at Brooklyn, and I'd like to extend my welcome as well to all our visitors. Our next panel, this panel to begin, is on hate speech. Hate speech is, of course, one of the most vexing issues in the First Amendment. Now, those of us of a certain age may recall that in the late 1980s and early 1990s, we witnessed the rise of campus speech codes. That controversy ultimately faded. But that controversy over campus speech codes was only one way station in the ongoing dispute over speech that's alleged to inflict serious equality and dignity harms, especially on vulnerable groups. The controversy goes back at least to Beauharnais versus Illinois in 1952, where the court endorsed a concept of group libel. From there, controversies over hate speech have evolved, again, to campus speech codes, to today's focus on speech attacking persons or groups based on their race, sex, religion, or sexual orientation.
Okay, this ended part one of this little series. There's going to be a second part to this. The first part was, of course, what we've just discussed, the legislation. You saw there Attorney General George Brandis summing it up. I'm no fan of George Brandis, but he summed it up perfectly. They want my case in the High Court. I have been critical of myself, and I've told people, not everyone was against me. I was a snarling, vicious dog. I had numerous people from the West Australian establishment reach out to me. Brian Steele's Curtin University lecturer on social justice, he reached out to me and said, Brendan, please calm down. Many of us are fighting corruption. You can't change things overnight. Many of us are doing well. I kept going and I kept screaming. Some of the West Australian, Paul Murray, Colleen Egan, the Minister Joe Francis, of course, Inspector Barish, people have reached out to me. All right, but I was getting harassed constantly. And I thought I was winning by screaming, and of course, really I wasn't. That was the West Australian Police and Steve Liebich doing that because they did not want me getting to the High Court. So I shot myself in the foot. I've been very honest about this. I said it 2 years ago that they weren't all bad and that I'd made mistakes. So the vicious snarling dog is over, and I want the establishment who are getting my videos too. I want the High Court. I'm going to aim for the High Court. I now have a lawyer interested. We've got to get briefing solicitors and all this sort of stuff organised, and we've got to fund it. It should be funded by Legal Aid WA. They've refused to fund it previously, but I think with public pressure they will fund it. They can claim they have no money. Well, of course not, because Senior Prosecutor Carmel Barbagallo floods the system with cases that the DPP cannot win. They do it deliberately to drain the resources of Legal Aid. And Simon Freitag, as I've mentioned before, said to me, Brendan, she always asks for jail. We ring her and tell her she needs to discontinue the case. She has no evidence and she just goes ahead anyway. They do it on purpose. I've got to get rid of these crazy nutcases in the DPP. All right, because they're claiming over and over that there's no money to fund things. So I hope you understand now, Section 18C of the federal legislation is identical to the state criminal legislation, Section 80B, that I was charged under. Conduct likely to offend. And as Attorney General of Western Australia, Peter Foss, stated in 2004 Hansard debate on the legislation before they introduced it, the word likely can mean anything, and the word offend, well, anyone can be offended. It is a sure thing in the High Court. There is also 5 charges under Section 77 of the legislation, conduct intended to incite. That will all be quashed. Now, whether they get rid of that aspect of the legislation, I don't think so, but they'll definitely get rid of conduct likely to offend or humiliate or insult. All those key words they use in the legislation. It will go. You must fund my case. You must assist me. You must send donations. You must, above all, some people have said we're going to post my stuff everywhere. Please, that's so important. I need a crew. I need a gang. I need a bunch of us all working together for that same goal. To the white supremacist nutcases coming on board, slagging off Muslims, slagging off brown people, slagging off black people, stay the hell off my stuff. Get away from me. You work for the opposition. All of this stuff is organised by Israel. The entire white nationalist movement is a Zionist psychological warfare operation. All right, many of you are sincere, and I've got no problem with you wanting to move to Idaho and live in your white paradise. That's fine. Black nationalists, some of my favourites are Malcolm X, Louis Farrakhan, Nation of Islam. So it's okay. I'm into your freedom to live amongst who you want, but stay the hell off my stuff. I'm just going to delete you from now on. I'm not interested in debating with you. I want you away. I want decent people to interview me. I want the normal mainstream to take me in, and they will. Israel is on the nose, political Zionism on the nose, and they know what Orthodox Judaism is now. The time is right, so help me get to the High Court. And now coming up is part 2, where I'm going to go after the media reporting and how they've tried to vilify me at times. Stay tuned, second part coming up now. Ciao for now.